So about sitting still, right? Um, I would say I would say that I think sometimes when people sit still and or try to get to a state of stillness, if you will, I
Mm.
feel like even for myself, some of the feelings that come up are like boredom or like feeling lonely, you know.
Right.
Is there anything to say about that? Because I don't think that the first emotions that people touch
Mm.
is like joy.
For sure. Like I guess what I'd say is like you observe the boredom, right? So the boredom comes up and you can see that happening. Like something in you is aware that you've become bored or that you've become lonely. Um, and the fact that you're aware of it means that that isn't the essential nature of your experience, because you're not the thing that is happening. You're not the boredom or the loneliness. You're the thing that is experiencing it. And I think that if in that kind of what in that moment when you're sitting still, instead of being the one that's bored and then taking actions based on your boredom, i.e. stopping or being like, oh, this is a waste of time, I'll do it later, you observe your boredom, your loneliness, your misery, whatever, literally whatever comes up, because anything can. And in observing it and taking the role of witness rather than kind of following the thought along and kind of getting on the train, it just goes, it just drifts away. Or you end up sitting watching your boredom for 15 minutes, that can happen too. That's also a thing. But yeah, that would be my take, is that like anything that you experience in let's call it meditation, anything that you experience in meditation is something to be observed and thus becomes part of the meditation, rather than like, yeah, as I say, you getting on that train and being like and being that person. Does that make any sense?
Yeah,
I
that makes
get,
total sense.
yeah, I get what you're saying. Justin, you got anything on?
No, I mean, I think we do this meditation and we do our practice and we continue with it because we know on some level that whatever thought or emotion or mental fluctuation that comes through it, it is transient, it comes in order to at some point to go.
Mm.
And if we didn't know that it was transient, then I don't think that we would have the faith to be able to sit and watch. If you feel like it's never going to end, then what do you if you feel like some sense of misery or loneliness will never end, it's like why are you sitting to watch it? You have to do something about it. Well, a lot of times when my mind is freaking out, I think about this. Was it Brer Rabbit story of the tar baby? Have you heard of this?
No, tell it.
Or it's like, I don't know, it's like aphorism, but there's a rabbit who's kind of tempestuous in nature, gets easily upset, and is walking down a path and sees this mound of tar that he thinks is like another rabbit. I'm just telling the story my own way. People tell it in many ways,
I'm enjoying your way.
he thinks that this mound of tar is another rabbit who's insulting him, and then he yells back at it, and they have these he's having these exchanges with this inanimate piece of tar, and eventually he goes and he swings at it and strikes it, and the tar sticks to him, and he keeps struggling and struggling and struggling, and he gets more and more tangled up in the tar. And long story short, the rabbit goes through many, many other sufferings, but eventually he just gives up because he's so tied up in all this tar and ickiness, and he whatever move he makes just makes things worse, and he just waits, and then he waits and waits and waits, and eventually the rain comes, and sitting in the rain, that tar is, slowly, as he just relaxes, that tar is washed away. So I feel a lot the same way, sitting, what we might call attempting to be still. I just feel like over time, if I just sit and watch and be patient, then eventually the rain comes, and it's that inner tar, that carcinogenic muck that's making our lives a living hell will just wash away. But it's a process.
No, I like that. I like that a lot. If we stop doing our own thing or our own circus, and we're just kind of, I guess, sitting or being or whatever you want to call it, eventually something comes and I don't know, flushes over us or washes through us or soaks us with something
Yeah.
a little bit with a little bit more juice, maybe.
Yeah, I love how quickly we've kind of gotten to basically the subject of faith. I think that's what we've arrived at, is like having some faith in whatever it is, whatever the highest thing, the highest possibility that you can imagine is, because that is the thing that I think, like Justin says, relaxing. Do you know what I mean? Surrendering to it and being like there's another story of Gajendra, who's a king turned into an elephant. I don't know if you guys know this one. Do you guys know Gajendra? Okay, king turned into an elephant. There's a lot of different tenets to it, as in lots of kind of Hindu mythology, but ultimately he ends up getting attacked by a crocodile, and it goes on for ages and ages. There's a really long bloody battle, and eventually he just has to surrender. He just has to completely let go, surrender his kind of, it's obviously it's a metaphor for the surrendering of the ego, and Vishnu appears and liberates him. But I think it kind of goes straight to that question, which can be a really tricky one, of faith, and what which I think is maybe probably an individual thing for everybody, and because it asks what you're believing in and what are you putting your faith in, and I think personally for me there's it's kind of the most it's the most effective secret sauce, I think, faith. Devotion, I guess, right? Is that's I think the two are kind of inextricably linked. But
I think sorry, I think people that generally are in that state of faith, I'll use the word faith because I want to talk about devotion right after, but
sure.
I think people that are in that state of faith, whether you agree with what they're doing, you disagree with what they're doing, whether they know something, whether they don't know something, all that I think is almost irrelevant, because people that are in that strong level of faith, that they're just sticking to whatever it is that they're believing in, man, I think that they have a really loud experience of life. And we can all agree or disagree with the ideologies and all that stuff, and I don't think any of that really matters, but generally what I've found is people who have a strong level of faith, I don't know, tend to move, seems like they're moving through life with a little bit more easy than some other people.
Yeah, they have a sense of trust. But I think
faith, I guess you can there is that level of trust, right?
Yeah, I think of faith as like faith in a teacher or faith in a path, like a trust that if I follow this path, it will take me to a better experience of life. But in terms of meditation itself, I don't think it requires any faith, for people who are more rationally minded, because all you have to do is observe that any experience within yourself, if it's mental or emotional or physical, it's always transient. It's always ephemeral. It never lasts forever. It always comes to go. I think that's if you see that, then you know that eventually there must be an experience where there's no more coming and going. That just seems like a logical inference to me that doesn't require faith. That if I sit and I observe keenly enough, and then there's no more fluctuation of my mind, then I must be in a different experience of life which I've heard from in stories from sages and mystics, is a very fantastic experience of life. So for me, a lot of my and I do have trust in certain, gurus and certain paths that I'm on, but at the same time, like, my practice isn't really grounded in faith, if that makes sense.
Mhm.